Hi and welcome back to the New Zealand Property Podcast and video series, and today I have next to me a fine gentleman that a lot of you would have seen before, but a lot of you won't know who he is. David Faulkner, who's the Director of Real IQ, and anything you need to know about property management in New Zealand, he's the man. So welcome to the show, first of all, David.
Thanks Mark, it's great to be in and thanks for giving me the opportunity.
No, all good. Now before you, first thing people want to know is who you are and what you do, but later we look at your resume, and there's a hell of a resume with you, so you could be here talking for hours about, what have I got here, most experienced in property management, probably around the country, recognised speaker, trainer, coach kids, sport, award-winning Toastmaster, humorous speech contest, and with all that, you're passionate about property management. What's that about?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the whole property management thing, I don't know, I like many people in the industry, Mark, they don't necessarily choose it as a career, they kind of stumble into it, and it was the same with me.
Yep.
And it's not an easy industry to work in. Now, my background was in hospitality, and so, I mean, I originally came to New Zealand in the mid-90s. You can probably tell I'm not from New Zealand. I came over playing rugby down in Southland. That was my first experience of freezing cold New Zealand housing.
No, you started in the proper place.
Yeah, I did, and so I fell out of hospitality and stumbled into property management. I was landlord, had my property managed by a company in Palmerston North where I lived at the time, and we kind of weighed up a couple of things about, do we sell up, do we move, went in to see the real estate company who was managing the property, and walked out with a job as a property manager, and that, I mean, I found my calling.
Right,
it all began, that would be about 15, 16 years ago. I just fell in love with the industry.
Okay.
I absolutely loved it, yeah.
Great, and then so what's you're the Director of Real IQ.
Yeah.
Tell people about Real IQ and what you've done over the last sort of few years to get to that position.
Yeah,
what you're doing
okay,
now.
so I used to, I worked as a property manager for a number of years with a large property real estate company in provincial New Zealand, a company called Property Brokers.
Oh yes,
I was also the chair of the Real Estate Institute Committee for Property Management, so I've always kind of had that role. I've got to learn the industry as I've grown within Property Brokers. Went from being a property manager, went to manage the entire division. So when I left, there was about 4,000 properties under management all around Hawke's Bay, Manawatu, Wanganui. Helped with the South Island franchises, and then just, I've always enjoyed the training aspect.
Right.
And so after I got to a certain point, I thought, well, can I go any further at Property Brokers? Kind of felt that I've reached my level of where I could go, and opportunity came along to work with a guy called John Crocker, who started Crocker's in Auckland, and he had a small consultancy business. I acquired that, worked with John for a wee bit. It changed its name from John Crocker and Associates. We came up with the concept of Real IQ, and the whole concept of that business is to grow and improve the property management industry, because there's, it's the quality of the industry isn't good enough at the moment, and that's not because of the quality of people in there. It's a lack of resources, a lack of training.
Yeah, and a lot of people listening to this, and even myself, have seen that with many people. So you go around training property managers around New Zealand.
And so we've formed a partnership with the Skills Organisation, one of the industry training organisations. So there is a qualification for property managers. We're seeing that kind of really, it's just snowballed over the last few months as people realise that we have to raise the game of the industry. And the people, what makes you qualified to call yourself a property manager? It's one of the few industries where there's a very low entry level.
Yes.
You don't have to be qualified. There's no regulation in the industry. All of that we'd like to see change. And so, my vision really was, when I first started out, after about 12 months of being in business doing a bit of consultancy work, Mark, I wanted to build a business that supported the industry. You're giving back.
Yeah.
And that was it was never about making money. I'll come on to aspects of that later on. It was about, doing something of value. And I'm kind of living the dream, really. We're delivering this qualification to an industry which I'm feeling very passionate about, and I know we're making a difference. I actually feel we're making a difference for New Zealanders all over. We're improving property managers. They're improving, hopefully, they're educating the landlords, who are then educated well enough to provide good quality rental properties for tenants. So all in all, everyone should benefit.
No, that's great, and I suppose you started right at the ground level, because unlike other industries, there's no regulation, as you said. You don't have to be have any qualifications to start a company. I started a company in Blenheim 10 years ago with no qualifications, and so it's great to see that getting better and better. And obviously the government, with their few things they got going on, which are a pain to some of us, is actually good over the overall picture to make good healthy home or good homes for tenants and what have you. So we'll probably move on to that right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things everyone's talking about since the Labor government come in is all the changes they made in healthy homes. What do you see? Because I've been out of the game for a while myself. I've got rental properties, but don't look after them anymore myself. So what do you see as what should I know about what has changed or what I should have done to my rental property? Yeah. And what what other things should I know what's going on right now?
Well, unless you've lived under a rock somewhere, I mean, we should all be fully aware of what with the insulation. So that's done and dusted. Yeah. Now there is going to be a backlog because just basically there's not enough supply to cope with the demand. So we are going to see a backlog before all these properties get to a point where they are insulated. The healthy homes, this is now, our industry is now moving on to let's get our properties ready for healthy homes. Now, I don't think there's, overall, I don't think there's a lot to be really concerned about. A lot of the stuff which has been identified as changes is already law already, going back to a rather dated piece of legislation called the Housing Improvement Regulations, which was done in 1947, so it's over 70 years old. It's just really that's evolved. Now, the big thing which we've seen change is that the state have now come up with the tenants have to have the ability to have an indoor temperature, that the tenants have got to be able to make this indoor temperature, which is 18 degrees Celsius. That's for the main living room. Now, the reason why they've come up with that temperature is because that's under World Health Organization guidelines. They're the standards that they set.
Right. Yep.
I feel, is my opinion, that our Prime Minister, she's very much an environmentalist. Right? I mean, she's signalled that loud and clear in the election campaign. The reality is, Mark, that a lot of New Zealand housing is not to a standard that it should be. When you look at, compared to like where I come from in the UK, where every house is double glazed, insulated, they're not just quite built to conditions here. So they're not really environmentally friendly in that sense. She's come across with this ideology to everyone's got to live in a warm, dry home. Look, I fully support that. There's some things which I think that it's going to have some negative consequences. Some of the things that they say that they've got to do, but overall, what landlords should be looking to do now is making sure that they understand what's in these housing healthy home standards around ground moisture barriers, around making sure that you've got the correct ventilation systems in the kitchen, in the bathroom, making sure that you've got adequate heating, that the heating is giving enough kilowatts to make sure that the living space can get to 18 degrees Celsius. That's probably the most challenging thing that landlords have got to prepare for, and that's probably some of the most common questions we're seeing being asked. And property managers.
Just a couple of questions on that. 18 degrees. What is that? Is it the warmest part of the day, the coldest part of the day, the average part of the day?
It's a good question, very good question. So it's the coldest part of the. So what they've got in these standards, they've got a list of temperatures for all around New Zealand. So, for example, Auckland it's 1, Central Otago it's -8. All right. So you're basing off the temperatures that the state have provided for you in the regulations. Right. So the outdoor temperature is -8. The tenants have to be able to get the indoor temperature to 18 degrees Celsius using qualified heaters. All right. So you can't put in 50 little electric heaters around to try and get it up. There's some clear guidelines around what a qualifying heater is.
Right. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah. So qualifying heaters that will not qualify, things like the gas unflued cylinders which you wheel in. You're not going to be able to use them. Electric heaters that are over 2.4 kilowatts, you cannot use them. All right. These little eco panels, the little crappy little things that it's got to. So for electric heaters, it's got to be between 1.5 and 2.4 kilowatts.
Right.
Interestingly, heat pumps, they don't class them as electric heaters; they're separate. So an average heat pump would probably be doing, 6.5 to 7 kilowatts. in its operational. So you'll have this. They'll have an online calculator where you'll have to get your dimensions of the room, the building elements, what they've done, the outdoor temperature. Type all that into this calculator, and what it will do, it'll give you, right, you need to have a heating device which will provide 7.5 kilowatts or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's around the heating.
Right.
And
But it's never ever going to be measured unless someone complains, I guess, or tenant complains.
What you've got to do, and this is what I think a lot of landlords, and unfortunately I've seen this within the industry, is that landlords will come to property managers and say, here's my insulation statement. And you just say, okay, but no one's checking. So they're manipulating the standard. They're manipulating the statements. There is the risk that this will happen again with this legislation. And this is now law. This is a change which has come in, which is as of the 1st of July this year. If a tenant states, look, you're telling me that it's got this, prove it.
Yeah.
The landlord will have to provide within 10 working days documentation
Show what it's in there.
to prove it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So what I think will be a backdrop of this is that we're going to see, we saw it trialled in Wellington, an absolute flop, and it was overkill, it was a bit of nanny state, was this rental warrant of fitness.
Yeah.
I think what will happen, that may be adapted to fit the healthy home standard. So every 4 years, someone comes round, they're qualified to do so, they'll go check, they may charge $200, $300. There's your certificate.
Another revenue collection.
Another revenue collection, yeah. So that's one of, it's kind of, maybe all the meth testers will do it now they're out of work, who knows.
That's right.
But that's, someone's going to come along and identify this as a business opportunity. And, so you pay whoever to do it, you've got your certificate, there you go, and you provide that to the tenants.
Right.
So that's where I see it going.
Okay. Another question on that is thinking of close to what we do. If you're a landlord out there, you own a house and you're selling it or you're buying it with tenants in place.
Yes.
The tenants are staying there. Obviously, if you buy it and it hasn't got insulation, you're in the firing line, I guess.
Oh, you've got an exemption, I think, and I've got now. I'd have to go back and double check. But if you've bought a house with sitting tenants in place, you do have a bit of wiggle room.
Time. I should know that too.
Yeah. That's fine. And we're now seeing that in some of these sale and purchase agreements, that there's clauses being written in around insulation and is the house compliant with the Residential Tenancies Act.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit of leeway because it's not fair. I mean, it's a landlord. I mean, to buy a house, you can't get it insulated immediately.
That's right.
So
there's
a
bit of job anyway.
Bit of common sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, jolly good. That's all good. So what? Obviously, healthy home is very, very big. What other changes are there around at the moment?
I think it's worth clarifying with the insulation as well, because you've obviously got a lot of landlords who've just, for whatever reason, they've probably been a bit slack or they've left it to the last minute.
Yeah.
And now they've got uninsulated properties. Now, whether the tenancy compliance investigate or tenancy services have done this right, open to debate, but they've basically, what they've done, they've gone out and said, right, you could be up for a $4,000 fine, and they've really hammered it in the media. Now what we've got now is all these tenants are going, oh, here we go, payday.
Yeah.
So they think that, right, I can imagine now we're about, a week or so in since the changes in legislation took place. I can imagine that tenancy services are really dealing with a large amount of applications from tenants, all thinking they're going to get a $4,000. That's not necessarily the case. Now, what the tenancy compliance team or tenancy services, they're not the judge, jury, and prosecutor, right? They are the enforcers. So if they see people who are negligent or not complying, then they have the authority to take you to the tenancy tribunal if you're a landlord. It's the adjudicator who's going to make the ruling, not tenancy services.
Right.
Now, the $4,000 is for the breach of Section 45, which is landlord's responsibilities.
Right.
And it states in landlord's responsibilities the property has to comply with the insulation standard. Eventually the healthy homes will merge into that. A breach of that, exemplary damages is up to $4,000.
Yeah.
Now, exemplary damages, how they work it, if it's an intentional, if you've gone out there deliberately, so if you've falsely written an insulation statement and it's not insulated,
Yep.
they've got to throw the book at you.
Yeah.
You know, and rightfully so.
Yep.
If you've just been a little bit slack, you've left it to the last minute, and you've got to wait a month or 2 months, yeah, you're in breach.
Yep.
But it's probably got to be more like 200, 300. I could be wrong, Mark, but I think it'd be very,
logic would come.
Logic will come. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you've not intentionally gone out to breach the RTA. You've just been a little bit poor on your time management and getting things organised. So that's some of the things that, you know, I think landlords have got to be aware of. It's not a case of, and the other thing that we've seen is that the Tenancy Compliance Investigation Team. Now, these are the state, you know, police for managing crooked landlords and prosecuting. Now, there's only a team of about 30 of them, and there's 560,000 rental properties, approximately 400,000 landlords.
Yeah.
They haven't got the resources to go around, and so what they've done, they've targeted property management companies. Now, this is contentious. This is debatable whether they can do this. And what they're doing, they're taking the property managers to tenancy tribunal.
Right. Yeah.
Right, saying we're holding you responsible. It states that you're the landlord. Well, you know, that's open to interpretation. I kind of think, no. The landlord's the principal of the business. They own the rental property. They've got responsibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, they can't just go, oh yeah, I've got a property manager, all current responsibility, it's not with me anymore.
Yeah.
Right, they've got to comply. They've got to provide a property that complies with the RTA. Now, what the property management companies have done is like scrambled trying to get all these landlords, get it done. I go around to them, they're sick to death of going, God, you know, we've got, and we've told them 10 times and they're still not doing it. And at some point they've got to go, right, 1st of July, we've got to drop them because we're not going to be in the news as the company which is all over for renting out non-compliant properties. We don't want to be facing the $4,000 exemplary damages if it's written in our name.
Yep.
Because you can go to the landlord and say, pay that. Well, the landlord, you try getting the money out of the landlord, some will just say, it's obviously your name. You know, so that's what they've tried to do. I kind of think they've gone around it the wrong way. They've almost tried to bully property management companies into dropping. All they're going to do, though, is form this black market of like unregulated landlords who just like do what they want. And there would have been better working with the property management company saying, look, are you struggling with particular landlords? Yeah, we're struggling with A, B, C, D. Can you write to them? Yeah. I think that would have been a far more productive approach than going round basically at a conference which they did last year, said we're coming after you. Which was pretty draconian in my opinion.
I guess the project managers trying to do their job, and people trying to avoid them deliberately. They've record that. That's so. I
mean,
bad,
Mark, no property manager wants to manage a non-compliant property. It's more work for less money.
Yeah.
You know, and there's risk involved. If you've got a property that doesn't comply, you've got a landlord who doesn't want to spend money on maintenance. You're only going to attract bad tenants. They're going to complain about maintenance issues. You've got to have arrears issues. You know, we want to manage warm, dry, safe homes, and it's better all round. So, you know, we can't make landlords do maintenance. You know, in certain times we can take control when it's a risk to someone's health and safety, but you know, if a landlord isn't prepared to invest in the property, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So pretty well, don't be ignorant with it. There's a golden rule for people watching this because you will eventually. There's pretty quickly. And there's no shortcuts, Matt.
There's none. We've gone through that legislation at length, so there's no way of working around it. The law is the law. Now, if the law's an ass, it's an ass. But it's the law. You know, you can't contract out of this.
Yes.
You know, you'll have a tenancy agreement. You want to say, right, we're not going to comply with this. That's quite a strict penalty in the RTA for that as well. You know, that comes under another section called prohibited transactions. So, you know, there's a lot there which, as property managers, they have to take on board. Their role is changing dramatically from what it was when I first got into the industry. It's a completely different ballgame.
Right. Okay, well there you go. So stop, get over yourselves, and get on. And you just have to do it. If you're probably as a manager, but if they're a half decent property manager, they've been looking after it for you anyway. Such as mine have been. So that's all good. Just another stuff that's changed a lot in the last 2 years, and I've been oblivious to some things, doing what I'm doing with the selling property. there's the periods of notice are looking at changing.
Ooh, yes.
What's the
now
what's
this
the go
is
with that, and is it going to happen? And
this is a lot more contentious. So again, a lot of the things that this government are doing, it's just different. When I first got into the industry, Mark, I mean, it was if you were a tenant, you were either a beneficiary or a student. That was generally the majority of tenancies.
Yeah.
Now it's completely different. You know, you've got people, professional people, they're going to be tenants for life. So they want to modernise the laws to make it, you know, more protected for tenants. We're getting to the point where it's maybe going too far.
Yeah.
Where tenants now seem to have this sense of entitlements. They're making all these unnecessary, sometimes unfair demands, threatening, you know. And what the coalition government is looking at is reviewing different things. The fixed term, for one, the fixed term tenancy may go, all right, and that's quite a radical change. And we follow UK legislation a lot because there's a lot of comparable. What happens in the UK seems to happen here, and vice versa. I know in Scotland they've got rid of the fixed term tenancy, so all tenancies are just on periodic. This is about protecting tenants so they're not getting kicked out of the houses. Getting rid of the 90-day no-cause evictions. Yeah. So what that means is I can give the tenant, and I've used it, very rarely have I ever used it, but I've used it when I feel there's an issue with safety to property managers. You know, so if you've got an aggressive tenant or someone who's like, you know, they get that feeling in your gut, your stomach.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, now what government are proposing, or what is open to discussion, they've not decided yet, and I hope they don't, is they're going to say, right, you've got to give a valid reason to give to the tenant notice. Right. And you may have to do this through the tenancy tribunal. Now, if a tenant's gone in your face a little bit and, you know, and you've got a young female property manager out there, I mean, are you going to have to go to tribunal because of that? How do you prove that happened? It's he said versus she says.
Yeah.
You know, are you going to have witnesses? The property manager's got to make a statement. And then if it's thrown out, you know, there's already enough legislation in there, in my opinion, Mark, that protects tenants. I don't think, you know, giving no-cause evictions, giving that the flick is not necessary. What's in the RTA? There's a section there, Section 54, unlawful, so, you know, retaliatory notice. So if a tenant complains about maintenance, oh, I want this fix, I want this fix, I want this fix, and the property manager and the landlord's go, oh, just get rid of him. And that does happen. Yeah. That does happen. Yeah. So the property manager goes and gives notice. Right. That tenant is well within their rights to say, right, we're giving you, we're applying to tenancy tribunal to have this revoked. They've got 28 working days to do so. $4,000 exemplary damages. You know. So there's already legislation in place that protects tenants. You know, it's pretty easy to prove if you've been. If it's retaliatory notice. Yeah. Yeah, so what I think, you know, these tenant advocate groups feel is that, well, tenants just don't know that and they're scared and they're intimidated. Well, then it's just better education. That's all it is. You know, and vast majority where tenancies end, Mark, it's the tenants who are giving notice. It's not the landlord.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I mean, you know, other things that concern me is if the house goes on the market for sale, you know, you can't end the tenancy. You basically the tenant can stay there for the duration of the sale process. Now, I've seen this happen as a property manager.
Every day.
Yeah, like, you know, they're going to become obstructive to the sales process. They're not going to look after the property, but not so bad that they're not breaching the RTA. It reduces the price of the asset.
Yeah.
So they're the type of things that, you know, this ideology that a government will come in and say, oh, we've got to protect this. There's always unforeseen consequences of it. You know, if a landlord wants to sell the house vacant, they should be allowed to sell the house vacant.
Yeah.
You know, and I would have that discussion when I used to do property management with landlords. I say, look, this tenant's got to be paying. You can tell that. They're going to be obstructive. They're going to be hanging around open homes. They're not going to tidy the place. You're not going to be able to present this house in the best condition. I suggest we give this tenant 90 days notice. We take the sale off. And then when the tenant vacates, we could tidy it up, put it back on the market.
So the government potentially looking at removing not only the 90 days, but as in you can't evict a tenant at all within a reason, apart unless you're going to move back in there maybe.
Yeah.
or a family member moved back in.
Yep, that's got to
or-
stay. That's got to stay, but that will go out to 90 days.
Yep.
I've got no real problem with that personally, Mark. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
know some landlords will and some property managers will, but I don't.
Some real estate agents will too, mate.
Oh, I know they will. I know they will, but people just adapt.
Yeah.
That's all that happens. We just
Absolutely.
adapt. You know, I would actually extend one thing I would do though is I would extend it from the tenants being able to give 21 days notice. I'd extend that, make it four weeks, and give it 28 days notice.
Yeah.
I think that should be, you know, so it's got to work on both sides.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess people particularly in the property management company or the owner just a little bit more time to
Exactly.
get their thoughts and decide what they're going to do, and then to go, right, we're going to rent it out. It's
And
fine,
you
we'll turn it
you
in.
know, if you're a tenant, you know when you're moving.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, even if they extend it to 35 days or whatever, or 42 days, I still think you know when you're going to vacate.
Yeah, yeah. And you come up with agreed date beforehand.
Exactly.
No worries at all.
Exactly. So I don't see any reason why you can't extend it. That's what I mean. If you hammer landlords too much,
Yeah.
and part of me feels that this has been an intention of this government is to almost try and bully landlords out of the market, thinking unwisely that it's going to be the tenants who are going to end up buying these houses, so we've got more home ownership. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
You know,
more costs, rents go up, and the
It's
people
exactly.
that vote for them are paying more money.
You look what's happened to rents in the last 18 months since 2 years since this government has been in it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is through fear. Landlords are going, my God, all these costs are going to go up. We're going to have to do this. We're going to have to do this. Capital gains tax, negative gearing. You know, I think that is the negative gearing is probably the worst thing I think that they're doing.
It is. Yeah.
You know, I think the
And that's
consequences
why,
of that are just not good.
Absolutely, especially now we're all paying $2,000-$4,000 for insulation, and we should have done it before the. We can't claim it against a tax at the end of the year, but
I mean, look, if the one criticism I've got of them is that I think they've just tried to do too much too quick.
Too soon. Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, and running a rental is a legitimate business. So you know, if Real IQ runs at a loss,
Yep.
you know, I can not that I intend to do so, but you can claim the losses back.
Yep.
You know, or the taxes on the. It should be. It's the same with the rental property. It should be.
Yeah.
And that money,
agree.
whether it's $3,000, $4,000, that's the money you need to reinvest into your property. That's what I've always done as a landlord.
Yep.
And you know, you take that away from them. All it's going to do, it's going to force mum and dad landlords out. You're going to see rent skyrocket even more because there's just a shortage of supply, and you know, then it leads to all these social issues as well. You know,
Absolutely.
it's an ideology which isn't well thought through.
Yep. No, all good. Right, moving on. Obviously not the answer to this one. The difference between looking after rental properties yourself,
Yep.
which still the majority of people, I think investors do around the country,
Yeah.
versus using a property manager, and moving on from that as if you are looking at getting a property manager. There's some good and bad out there, and obviously what you're doing is trying to make the more good, which is a great thing for the property environment. Is what questions do you ask a property manager when you interview one as well?
Good. Yeah,
There's a couple of questions for you.
I mean, there should be, you know, so if you've got to, first thing to do, if you've got to decide if you've got to do it yourself, and there always will be, Mark, you know, we can't force everybody to use a property manager, we get that, but you've got to know what you're doing. You've got to know some of the basics of the RTA. Now, this is one of the things which is wrong with our industry. I already say this. If I went into a room of 100 property managers and I asked them to name 5 pieces of legislation within the RTA, explain what they are, tell me what number they are, and they won't do it. Now, that's like 2% of the RTA. You know, so if you've got to manage it yourself, you've got to have a good basic understanding of some of the key sections so that you know that you're compliant.
Yep.
All right. It's some of the mistakes I see private landlords make is that I think therefore it is, you know, and that's not the case. The law is the law.
Yep.
All right. You've got to have the time. Now, we estimate when we break down, everything in property management is quite analytical. You can measure it quite deeply. The average property manager would spend about roughly 30 hours managing one property in a year.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So you've got to know that I've got to spend 30 hours of my life, where I've got to dedicate to running that property. All right. So I've got to know what I'm doing. I've got to have the time. Now, if you've got 5, 6, 7 properties, I don't know how the hell you could do that. You just, you know, unless you're doing it as a full-time job yourself.
Yes,
So they're some of the things that you've got to ask, and you've got to ask, what's my time worth an hour? You know, if you put $100 an hour on my time or whatever it may be, and it's 30 hours, well, there's $3,000. You're probably paying a property manager probably about $2,000 a year. Now, if they're giving you all that peace of mind, they're looking after the asset for you, they're keeping you compliant, all that type of stuff, well then, in my opinion, it's money well spent, because I can go off and do other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of the questions to ask if you're looking at using a property manager. First of all, things like you want to make sure that they're not managing too many properties or they're not managing too few properties. The typical property to staff ratio, this isn't property to property manager, property to staff ratio, is around about 60-70 properties per member of staff.
Right.
All right.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you'll have property managers there managing 150, that's fine, because if they're working in a big team, they've probably got the resources behind them that can automate a lot of the, you know, smaller processes.
Yep.
All right. If you've got a boutique or a startup property manager and they've only got 20-30 managements, I mean, they're going to be struggling. If all it takes is 2 or 3, 4 of them to sell, they're probably not going to be making money.
No.
All right. So, you know, this isn't poo-pooing small boutique startups. We've all got to start somewhere.
Yep.
You know, but you've got to make sure that they've got the capacity. They can make money. They've got to make a profit.
Yep.
All right. What happens if they get sick? What's the backup? Do they have professional indemnity insurance?
Yep.
Do they have a complaints process? Do they use a trust account, making sure that your money, and it's your money, it's secure. You think about,
right.
when you look at how much money can sit in some of these trust accounts, I mean, you're talking millions of dollars.
Yep.
You want to make sure that whoever's administering that account, you know, it's a they're not going to disappear and walk off with all the money. What makes them qualified? So experience, are they qualified? I don't want to, like, a bit of a plug for, you know, the qualification we do with skills, but it's an industry that should be. There's a lot of skill that you need to be able to manage property.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. In terms of the industry, I think that what will happen, property managers will become more legal advisors to the landlords, like almost like a legal consult, not the lawyers, but we've got to be able to sit down and have those difficult conversations with landlords where they say, look, this is going to cost you a bit of money, but you have to do this.
Yeah.
That's the sign of a good property manager who's got the integrity, the strength to do that. Sometimes they come into the industry, they haven't got the experience. The landlord says, I want this, I want this. Scared of upsetting the landlord, they just say yes when they shouldn't. They should say no. And they get walked all over. And they burn out because it's just every day there's conflict.
Yeah. How long, someone said, if you ask me how often do you inspect my property? Probably I said 6 months. What would you say to that? Too long?
No, I funny enough, I actually think we inspect properties too often. I mean, I think 3 months is probably too much, depending on the quality of the tenant you've got. A lot of this is dictated to by what's in your insurance. So typically, most property management companies about 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
You know, across the ditch, it's probably more like 6 months. About 30% of a property manager's time is inspecting properties. They're out inspecting all the time, so it's a major part of what they do. So yeah, personally, if I know I've got a good tenant in place, I think 6 months is enough.
I was going to say it would be good if you can, if the company has their policy, that's probably it. But it should almost be like like real estate, so different every case we do. It should be a case by case situation, and yeah, I mean, for example, at the moment I'm buying property for where I actually rent at the moment where I am, and I'd like to consider I'm probably the top of the range of tenants. And we're getting someone comes around every 3 months and it's cleaner than their own house would ever be.
I know.
But I've had tenants that I'd like to inspect every month.
Yes.
So it'll be good to see if Logic took over with some
This
companies.
Is, of course.
They do 6 to 3.
Yeah, this is where I think technology's got a role to play with our industry and with housing in general. I mean, I've spoken with companies. There's one company I've spoken with called Tether. Now they have devices that they just like a smoke alarm, and they'll go into a house and they'll pick it up and it'll monitor the carbon dioxide emissions, so you can see if the house is being overcrowded. Ambient light measures the indoor temperature.
Right.
So then you've got all the devices which will measure the power consumption being used. So if you've got this is how I see the industry evolving, and we're not too far away from this. The technology's already there. We're just slow on the uptake with housing because it's, people don't want to spend the money on the house if they don't have to.
Yeah.
But we'll have devices which will read the performance of a house like it's a living creature.
Right.
This information will be fed through to property managers or to whoever's looking after the assets. So you can see how the property's performing without physically having to go into the property. Now, as you said, Mac, you're a great tenant. Why should a property manager have to go through every 3 months? There's no need for it.
No need for them, no need for the tenant, no need for both parties.
So, and half the time, all they're doing a 15-minute walk around. Are they going to be able to identify? They're not builders. Have they got the skill set to be able to identify when there is a maintenance issue? Sometimes they haven't. So there could be a gradual leak happening somewhere. If you've got devices in a property which is actually feeding this information to property managers and it's picking up, moisture content in this house has increased, something's wrong, then you can send someone out to inspect it, fix it. That's where I see the industry will evolve.
So how far away is that sort of thing, and can that legally happen today? If people
if a tenants agree. I mean, there's privacy aspects with certain things that you've got to make sure that tenants are on board. But I think, if I was a tenant and I knew that I had these devices which are managing the performance of the house, which is going to keep me in a healthier environment, I'd be all for it. So I think there's technology out there which can do it now. Mainstream, I think you're looking 5-6 years. I think it will become companies. The early adopters will probably maybe include it in management fees and just increase the management fee to cover the cost of all of this.
Geez, can we push a button and get the curtains opened up every day to let the sunlight come in?
Well, these are the type of things where education is so important.
Yeah.
You see, one of the key sections in the RTA is tenants' responsibilities, Mac. And tenants have a responsibility to tell you if there's damage or if there's, if there's mould, they've got a responsibility to tell the landlord. Now, if they don't tell the landlord inspects the property, this is mouldy, the curtains are drawn, whatever, and they haven't told you, it's on them. Sometimes you just don't know how to use the RTA.
Yeah.
The legislation's there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, education with tenants, right? You have to keep these windows open to let, like, I've got a 16-year-old teenage daughter. I have this lecture to her every day. It goes in one ear, out the other. Yeah. So, but at least you can show that you've demonstrated, we've told you, you are not looking after this property. If there's any damage, you're liable.
Yeah.
And that's some of the things that we've got to, we've had issues with the whole Saki case where tenants are free from accidental damage, and I wouldn't say that's accidental. They've adopted a way of life
that's right.
that has led to inevitable damage. Yeah. They should be responsible.
Which may be intentional, or they haven't been educated, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Okay, so technology obviously is going to be for the better coming up in the future. Any other trends you see sort of going on in the market apart from that, or is the technology the biggest change coming up?
I think certainly with technology, certainly I think within our industry there is this push to getting people more educated, more qualified. One of the biggest concerns I have for our industry is the well-being of property managers. We had the case where tragically a couple of years ago 2 property managers were shot and killed.
Yeah.
So every day these people are going into people's lives, and you've got social issues with drugs and whatever it may be, and they could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and they made bear the brunt. So I certainly think what I'd like to see our industry go is that employers have more of a take on more of an ownership and more of a responsibility in looking after the workers.
Right.
Don't tolerate landlords who bully you into doing things. Don't tolerate tenants who abuse you or whatever just because you've issued a rent increase.
Yeah.
Take a zero tolerance approach to it. And all that happens is a tenant pleads a victim or whatever, and they feel they've got tribunal to protect them. Nah. We've got to look after the people who work coming down that industry and educate them better.
So at the moment, if that's the case, what's the best way for a landlord to, whether they have if they haven't got a property manager, which they should have, that's the best way then to just give them notice or take them to the tribunal, or
what's that with tenants?
If they are being just disruptive, disgusting, dirty, not cleaning, you give them the I'm sure it is now 7-day or 14-day notice to rectify.
Well, the first thing to do, if you've got a problematic tenant, now you've got to, and this is where a lot of people get hung up and they struggle with this, you've got to park your emotions.
Yeah,
it's a business.
Yeah.
You're running a business, they are a consumer, The tenant's a consumer, they're paying for the property, so you've got to treat them always with respect. Even if they're not looking after the place, you always treat them with respect. So park your emotion. The minute you lose your temper, relationship's gone. It's gone. So keep your cool. First and foremost is the first thing you do. Talk to them. All right? Everything that you talk to them, document it. You got a file note about it. All right? If it continues, then 14-day breach. All right? Once you've acted on the 14-day breach, if it means applying to tribunal, apply to tribunal. All right? So there is a disputes resolution process is there, and the Tenancy Services website, Mark, is good in that sense. There's lots of information on there. But if you know, some people shouldn't be landlords. I have to say that, you know, who are emotionally, you know, they get overly attached to things or whatever. You know, you're in business. Things are going to go wrong from time to time. It's part of being in business. You just got to accept it. You know.
I would just say one thing myself is probably it happens the wrong way around. I think people that don't use property managers, people start out. I did exactly the same thing. First property, knew nothing about being a landlord. But you go, I want to save $1. I was in Blenheim. It wasn't quite so bad. I went past it every day. Or four flats, and you're soft. You don't make the hard decisions. And I'd say if you can get the property manager there, you'll learn how to take emotions out of it. Property is not an emotional thing. Whether you're buying, renting, whatever it is, take emotions out of it if you can, and it's easier by identifying a separation between you and
it tends to bring the worst out of people, Mark, because you're dealing with, you know, people's investments. It's like the life savings or whatever. It's the nest egg, and in tenants' cases, it's their home. So it can bring out the worst of people. It really, really can. And so that's where, you know, if you've got a strong property manager, sometimes I have to say I do see this. Some of them are, you know, the property managers who've got personality plus, and the landlords love them. You go and have a look at the portfolio. Sometimes they're not the best managed, but sometimes you get that hard, you know, type of property manager. I look at the portfolio; it's immaculate. You know, so questions you want to be asking of property managers. Other questions is like, what's your arrears like? If they hesitate in answering you, just walk. Gone. Next one. You know, little things like that. Asking them questions. What's the occupancy rates you're running at? Things like that.
They should know.
They should know all this type of stuff. You know.
Oh, jolly good. I know you're a busy man, David, and you're busy again today, and we appreciate your time coming in. Any parting comments maybe you just want to say to any listeners there? Will be first-time landlords, there'll be people with 100 properties out there listening right now. Any sort of parting comments to anyone?
Well, any parting comments to anyone is I'm a big believer in reading. You know, you can go onto some of, I mean, I've seen the Facebook chat room for investors and things like that. Take some of the comments on there with a pinch of salt, because I see a lot of the comments on there and I'm just going, oh my God, that's just so ill advice. So do your own research, get a team of experts if you're getting into investment. One of them should be a property manager, in my opinion, or, you know, different, you know, mortgage brokers, insurance, all these people who can help you. And I've learned this in my own business. You can't do it all yourself. You need to get good people you can trust around you, and have a plan with the end game in mind. That's the other thing that I think is always important, is like, why you're doing this. I mean, 80% of landlords, all the stats of every property management business we see is the same, Mark. It's like 80% of clients have one property, 90% have no more than two. I'm sure people who get into property investment are not there to just get one property. You know, so have a plan for get from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to whatever. And plan for a rainy day. Have a bit of a contingency. Don't overstretch yourself. That's probably, you know, another thing that I've seen that investors make in my time within this industry.
You spend a lot of time about in these conversations about goals and setting why you're doing it and what you want to do. So, hey, thank you very much today, David.
It's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, and you know a lot about and we appreciate what you're doing helping property managers around the country. So, thanks so much for your time.
No, thanks, Mark. It's an absolute pleasure. Great.
Cheers. We'll be back next week. See you later.